You know what? That is actually better than I expected. What? And my heads-up display folds out to greet me. Very old school. It even shows like an old school loading symbol and then says hello with 2 exclamation points. To be honest, it just kind of is better than this car in every way. I've been seeing an average of about 2 liters per 100 kilometers. This really isn't a pass. In fact, I'd call it kind of a fail. Hey guys, how's it going? Today we're here with a bad, cheap Indian car. Yes, that's right. This is the Suzuki Fronx, which is a mishmash of the words frontier and crossover. Now, compact crossover, this certainly is. Frontier, I don't know what this is the frontier of. And before you come at me in the comments saying this isn't an Indian car, well actually the Fronx is made by Maruti Suzuki in India, much like the Suzuki Jimny that we do get in Australia. And in fact, the engine in this thing is very closely related to the one in the Suzuki Jimny. Now, as I said, the Fronx is a brand new nameplate to the Australian market. It is a compact SUV that shares a platform with the now discontinued Suzuki Baleno, the budget-friendly hatchback that we used to get from Suzuki. Now, this does compete against the likes of the Mahindra XUV 3XO and the Chery Tiggo 4 and other cars like the MG ZS and even the Skoda Kamiq. So it's actually quite a stacked segment here in this compact crossover segment. So today we're going to be taking a pretty close look at this Suzuki Fronx. I'll tell you exactly what you get in this single trim level that's available here. Of course, I'll show you all of the inclusions on the interior because some of the things surprise me pleasantly and some things surprise me unpleasantly. And of course, I'll be testing out the way that this thing drives because, like I said, there are good things and there are certainly bad things with this car. And then, of course, I'll end on my final thoughts. Do I think that the Fronx is worth the money, or should you go for one of its budget competitors? Maybe another car from India like the Mahindra XUV 3XO. Let's get into it. All right, guys, let's talk pricing now of the Suzuki Fronx, and it's only available in a single spec here in Australia, which does come decently well equipped for the money. $28,990 before on-road costs, and there is currently a launch offer for sub 30K drive away. But keep in mind that doesn't include the silver paint as well as the two-tone black roof. Now, that does make this SUV more expensive than something like a Chery Tiggo 4 Pro, which comes in at $23,990 drive away for the base model, or $26,990 drive away for the top spec Ultimate, or you can get into the Mahindra XUV 3XO for $26,490 for the top spec AX7L. And that's drive away, by the way, and that thing comes really well equipped for the money as well. So this thing's gonna have a hard time competing against those two value players, but let's take a look at the way that this thing looks. I really like these headlights up front, actually. They are a bright LED unit. You do get LED turn signals as well, and decently bright LED headlights. You can see we have our massive Suzuki badge there. Nothing's changed. A decent looking grille that is blacked out. You get your radar there for your adaptive cruise control, cameras up there for your autonomous emergency braking. This thing does come pretty well equipped in terms of safety. However, there are a couple of key omissions in this car, just like the Mahindra, that will prevent this from getting a 5-star ANCAP safety rating. Like, for example, there's no driver monitoring system, which gets a thumbs up from me. You can see down the bottom we have a pretty basic plastic bumper there, and like I mentioned, this silver paint does come at a premium. But let's check out the side. Alrighty guys, coming to the side now, you'll notice this thing is quite compact looking, and in fact it's very similar in terms of dimensions to the Mahindra XUV 3XO. So just under 4 meters in length. The wheelbase is at 25-20 millimeters, which does place the wheels in all 4 corners, which is a really good characteristic for this type of vehicle because it gives it lots of space on the interior, even considering how compact the car is on the outside. But coming down here, you'll notice we have 16-inch alloy wheels here. These are wrapped in Goodyear Assurance tires, actually pretty decent rubber, same exact tires as on the Mahindra XUV 3XO. You can see we have our 360 camera there. This thing does actually get a pretty decent 360 camera. Does a little animation when you turn the car on as well. Blacked out mirror caps there. You can see we do get keyless entry and go, and that is on the passenger side as well. However, the boot is not keyless entry, so keep that in mind. We also get privacy glass here at the rear. It's super tinted, I can barely see in. And you can see we have our two-tone roof here, but unfortunately no roof rails up there. And apart from that, you can kind of see it has this trendy, swoopy, coupy design at the rear. But let's check out the arse. Alrighty, coming to the business end now of the Suzuki Fronx, you can see we have our Suzuki badge there. Also LED tail lights, and in fact the tail light does extend all the way along the rear of this car. It is a proper light bar, which is cool to see. You can see we have Fronx spelt out there, and weirdly you get a hybrid badge here. And Suzuki are in fact calling this the Fronx Hybrid. And technically that's true. It is a 12-volt mild hybrid system, but that hybrid system really only works for the starter generator. It doesn't doesn't really assist the drivetrain that much once you are moving. So calling it a hybrid, in my opinion, is a bit of a stretch. Probably doesn't need the hybrid badge at the rear. Not to mention you get this EV badge here on the license plate, which is a bit ridiculous in my opinion. But what else? We also get this plastic bumper down the bottom, which looks interesting, and a nice hidden exhaust pipe down the bottom. I know I'm being mean about the hybrid badge, but I actually really do like the look of the rear end of this car. I think it looks really muscular and it looks quite wide and low. But let's check out what it can fit inside of itself. And weirdly, there's no boot release here. It's actually down the bottom here, and there's no keyless entry for that either. So coming inside the boot now, you can see we have 304 liters of boot space, which is actually significantly less than the Mahindra XUV 3XO, which does get 364 liters of boot space. Another thing that car gets is a space saver spare wheel. Let's see what we get underneath here. So we actually get a false floor, which is pretty impressive to see. So you can fit larger items down the bottom there, and it is actually quite low as well. If I open this up though, you'll see we have a massive empty foam section with a tire repair kit, air compressor, but there is no space saver spare wheel in sight, which to me is a massive omission. Look, I know you're not going to be taking this thing off-roading, but to me, you've got space for a space saver spare wheel. Why not include it, especially given that you're at a more premium price point than some of the competitors that do include it? So that to me is not great to see. Another super weird omission, and this is actually one thing I noticed today while filming, is that you get what appears to be a car jack slot here on the side, but if you open it, you can see it's actually completely empty. There's no car jack in there. So yeah, if you're thinking you get a car jack just based on that icon that's on the thing, unfortunately you're just out of luck. And yeah, so no spare wheel, no tire jack, you're a bit screwed. I hope you got an RACV roadside assist membership. Anyway, head scratcher aside, you can also expand storage space by folding down the second row, and that gives you a measly 605 liters of cargo capacity. So really, in terms of practicality, especially if you see how it stacks up against the competition, especially something like a Skoda Kamiq, which has heaps of cargo capacity in the boot, this really isn't a pass. In fact, I'd call it kind of a fail. But let's check out the interior. Alrighty guys, door sound quality check. Pretty decent. Let's start her up. That was a nice little welcome sound. And my heads-up display folds out to greet me. Very old school. It even shows like an old school loading symbol and then says hello with 2 exclamation points. Yeah, that's kind of the theme of the interior of the Suzuki Fronx. It definitely feels very old school. It's doing a cool 360 camera animation. Let's just begin. So starting with this steering wheel, it's leather covered here up the top, but you do get this kind of plastic material that does feel a bit cheap down the bottom. You do get all physical buttons. So you have your volume and media controls on the left. You have an info button where you can go through a few different menus here. On your tiny digital display, which does sit between 2 analog gauge clusters, very old school there. Haven't seen one of them in a little while actually. And on the right hand side of the steering wheel, you do get your adaptive cruise control system with your lane centering function as well, which actually works quite well. And on the right hand side of the steering wheel, we have our start stop button as well as our adjustment for our heads-up display and our safety toggle switches if you need to turn them off for whatever reason. What else do we get? Well, we get this touch infotainment display. It is a very, very basic unit. It's really only one layer of menus. You can kind of move things around a bit, access things like your fuel economy, drive information, energy flow diagrams, whatever you like, and even turn on and off the wireless charger if you need to do that, for example. And you also get wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. However, I have struggled quite a bit actually to get my phone connected to this. It's working now, however, sometimes it just doesn't work. And it's a good unit when the wireless Apple CarPlay actually chooses to connect. However, like I said, it's not really consistent. Below the screen, we have a couple of air vents, which are manually adjustable, and we also get a single zone of climate control, unfortunately, up the front. No dual zone here. And in fact, this entire layout here is very reminiscent to me of the Mahindra XUV 3XO. It's very, very similarly laid out, except just not quite as nice in my opinion. In fact, if we feel around the cabin, it's pretty much all scratchy materials all the way up here. That panel doesn't really fit that well. Scratchy materials up here and all along the top of the door, it's all scratchy up here. And you get a little bit of leather feeling material there and soft for your arm, but apart from that, it's pretty much all scratchy, which is a bit of a shame. They have done something a little bit interesting here, I guess. We get some glossy black plastic as well as silver plastic insert there. But even here in this center console, it's just all boring kind of black plastic and it's all kind of cheap feeling. So a bit of a shame. I know this is a budget car, but it really does feel budget in, especially if you open the glove box. Just kind of drops open. So I hope your passengers' knees aren't there. And you also get a couple of cup holders here and decent sized door bins, which is good. So practicality is decent. Unfortunately, while this center armrest is soft feeling, there's really hardly any space inside there. You can't really fit much more than your keys, pretty much. Like I mentioned before, we do get a wireless charger, and it does have a nice grippy texture to it. You do get a single USB-A port at the front, as well as a 12-volt socky-wocky, so connectivity is adequate, I would say. Moving back from there, we get a very old school feeling shifter. Be careful not to drive off in manual mode if you're just used to pulling it all the way down to the bottom position. You have to go one up from that position, but no issue there. We also get a sport mode button, which can be toggled on or off, and we also get heated seats here in the front, which actually work pretty decently. Speaking of seats, these are manually adjusting, which isn't the end of the world, but especially when you consider some of the competition like the Chery Tiggo 4, which do come with power adjustment, it's starting to feel like this is not as well equipped as some of the competition. I do like the fact that you can tilt and telescope the steering wheel, which does allow you to get into a decently comfortable driving position, however. And while these seats aren't the most luxurious feeling and you don't get any adjustable lumbar support, they still feel comfy enough for longer journeys. I will give props though to the sound system. It's actually pretty decent. It's unbranded. You do get 6 speakers total, and it actually sounds okay. Decent bass level as well. One last thing before I get to the back seats, and that is the lack of any kind of sunroof. So like I mentioned, there is only one spec level coming to Australia for the Fronx, and there's no sunroof. While the Chery Tiggo 4 Pro Ultimate, as well as the Mahindra XUV 3XO do get sunroofs, this one misses out, which is a bit of a shame. But let's check out the back seats. Alrighty, back seats now, and that was actually a decent thunk as well. So one area that this actually quite impressed me in was the spaciousness of the back seats. So plenty of legroom, plenty of toe room. Unfortunately, the roof, because it does slope down quite significantly, there's not much headroom at all in the back. But overall, it does feel nice and spacious back here, and the seats are also decently comfortable. They offer enough under-thigh support. However, amenities back here is where it once again falls apart compared to the competition. So no air vents in the rear. There is only a single zone of air conditioning in this entire car. You do get a little storage area here, and strangely, you get a USB-A port and a USB-C port in the rear. So no USB-C port up front, but you do get one in the rear. That's just really strange decision making to me. We do get some mat pockets on the back of the seats and a decent sized door bin, but quality of materials back here, it's all scratchy all along the door. You get some soft materials here and a little bit soft here for your armrest, but also no fold down center armrest in the back seats. It just doesn't really justify its additional cost over something like a Mahindra XUV 3XO or even a cheap Chinese competitor like the Chery Tiggo 4 Pro. But you know what does stack up to the competition? CarSauce buy. If you guys are in the market for any new car, whether it's a Suzuki Fronx, maybe a Mahindra XUV 3XO, or any car for that matter, make sure you check out CarSauce buy. We've already helped thousands of you guys use our service, and we've recently launched CarSauce buy 2.0 with improved back-end logic to match you with the best dealer possible to get you the best price on your next car. Of course, it is completely obligation free, so if that sounds good to you, make sure you scan the QR code that's been on screen or Google CarSauce buy and join the many happy customers that have also used the service and gotten a great deal on their latest car. All right, guys, let's see if the Fronx can redeem itself in the way that it launches. Let's do it. Alrighty guys, it's time now to launch the Suzuki Fronx. This thing does not have much power, does not have much torque, but we're gonna test its 0 to 100 time here today. I've got my specialist timing gear. I'm gonna brake boost launch it. First thing I'm gonna do, put it into sport mode, and you're gonna fist me. Let's do this. Let's build up some bloody boost, even though this doesn't have a turbo. Let's do it. Oh God. Struggled to put the power down to the front wheels there, come on. Oh, we're at 80, let's keep going. Please. You can do this. You know what? That is actually better than I expected. What? I didn't think it would beat the Mahindra XUV 3XO, but we got 0 to 100 in 11.03 seconds. You know what? That's not bad. Let's drive this thing normally. Alrighty guys, so let's drive the Suzuki Fronx normally. As you can hear, and you probably heard in that last section, this thing does not have a quiet powertrain. So let's talk about it. So you do get a 1.5 litre naturally aspirated petrol engine. It does make a cool 76 kilowatt of power, 137 Newton meters of torque. And that is connected to a 12-volt mild hybrid system. So no 48-volt mild hybrid here. This is a very, very mild hybrid, and it's mostly only using electricity for the start and stop system. So in terms of saving fuel during regular driving, it's not really going to have a massive impact, but you do get some regen braking. It does charge up that battery when you brake. It does come with a 6-speed automatic torque converter transmission, and I won't go out and say it's the best transmission I've ever used in an automatic car, but it gets the job done and it keeps the car nice and efficient, though it does sometimes seem a bit indecisive when it comes to knowing what gear it wants to be in. However, a lot of that can be fixed if you switch it to sport mode, but it does tend to hold the gears for a bit too long. It really likes to keep you all the way up to 6,000 revs every gear. So yeah, it's difficult to find a good balance for the transmission, but around town you won't really notice it that much, which is good. But I do think that the 6-speed ASIN that you do get on the Mahindra is just that little bit better. But let's take this first corner, see how this thing handles. Geez, a little bit of body roll there. It's certainly not as soft as something like a Chery Tiggo 4, but I have to say, if you compare it to something like a Mahindra XUV 3XO, I mean, that thing just handles quite a bit better than this. And oh my goodness, you really have to row through the gears to get up the hill and keep accelerating. This isn't a very heavy car, 1,064 kilos, but 76 kilowatt of power is definitely lacking. Even the little turbo 3-cylinder on the Mahindra gets more power than that and heaps more torque. I think that gets 200 Newton meters of torque. You know what we do have up our sleeve? We have a sport mode, so I'm going to switch it there. We get slightly better throttle response. It holds the gears a little bit longer. If we look at the steering, it's actually not bad. I feel the steering response is quite natural. It's evenly weighted. Definitely on the heavier end. Oh, we're about to go through the ball buster. Let's see how the suspension handles this. Ooh, okay, not bad. Definitely on the harsher end. Not enough to completely hurt you. Yeah, it's really struggling to accelerate up this hill. Guys, I'm not a massive fan of this powertrain, but honestly, if you're buying this car, you're most likely buying it, I don't know, maybe your retirement age, or maybe it's your first car. No judgment here, but you are probably focusing mostly on fuel economy, and that's where this thing really does excel. I've been seeing an average of about 6.3, 6.2 liters per 100 kilometers, and that is pretty consistent across a wide range of different driving on the freeway, around town. You aren't really going to be seeing much more than those low sixes. I'm going to chuck a Yui here real quick, and this is a good test of a vehicle's turning circle. So this should get a sub 10 meter turning circle. Let's see if we can do it. Ooh, a little bit off the road, but that was pretty good. Mostly on the road, no need for a 3-point turn there. And that is one of the benefits of getting a small little compact SUV. But here's the real test. We're about to take this thing on Saucy Corner. I'm going to keep it in sport mode. We're going to see just how well it can handle our patented double hairpin. This is a real good test of a car's steering and handling ability. I'm going to brake boost launch it. Wish me luck. Tickle my little pickle. Let's do this. Ooh. Good grip. Let's take this first hairpin quite quickly. Whoa, there's a lot of understeer. Oh my goodness. It's not afraid to give me the power though. Whoa. Yeah, look, it's no sports car, that's for sure. And those tires were really being pushed to the limit there. Another thing I will give this car credit for is it does have really good adaptive cruise control and lane centering, and overall, the safety systems are definitely on the less intrusive side, and you can also turn them all off really easily with the buttons to the right of the steering wheel. So no complaints there at all. But really, I can't help reviewing this car without comparing it to the Mahindra XUV 3XO, which, to be honest, it just kind of is better than this car in every way. I don't really think the Suzuki Fronx is befitting of wearing a hybrid badge. Yes, it's a mild hybrid, so yes, there are electrified components on this car, but this is a very long way from a proper hybrid car, that's for sure. But in terms of general comfort and drivability, I really can't complain too much. Road noise is quite minimal. You don't get too much wind noise in here, and it does handle okay for the segment. It's only once you start to consider the price of this car and some of the other options that are out there, like I said, the Chery Tiggo 4 or the Mahindra XUV 3XO, or even something like the Renault Duster, which is now available, and you start to see that in terms of value, this might not stack up. So do I think you should spend your hard-earned cash on a Suzuki Fronx? Well, let's get into my final thoughts. Alrighty, so final thoughts on the Suzuki Fronx. Do I think you should be rushing out to buy one of these over something like a Mahindra XUV 3XO? Well, to be completely honest, I don't think this car rides as well as that. doesn't feel as refined on the road, and the powertrain certainly feels quite lackluster. Even though it surprised me with the 0 to 100 launch, I still feel like this naturally aspirated engine is very lackluster. However, you do get decent fuel economy, so that is good. But when you consider how much more expensive this car is compared to the Mahindra XUV 3XO, yeah, maybe you get slightly more room in the back, but the exterior styling, the interior luxury, and the driving of that car is so superior to this car. It's very difficult to recommend this car over that one. Still, and I say this in the nicest way possible, if you are coming from an older Suzuki, you will definitely feel very at home in this car. It still feels very old school in a lot of ways, so if you are a tech-phobic person, this might be the car for you. But of course, let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. What do you think of the Suzuki Fronx? And of course, if you guys are in the market for a Suzuki Fronx or any new car for that matter, make sure you check out CarSauce Buy. Our dedicated team of car buyers work tirelessly to get you the best price possible on your next car. And of course, if you're interested in more cheap Indian car reviews, make sure you subscribe. We've got lots more coming. Ciao for now.